Hello, welcome to FFRF's Ask an Atheist. I'm Liz Cavell, Associate Counsel at the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
And I'm Christina DeLeiden, Chapter Liaison here at FFRF. Today on FFRF's Ask an Atheist, we'll be speaking with Janelle Cronk, Campus Organizer for the Secular Student Alliance. It's the only national nonprofit dedicated to atheist, humanist, and other non-theistic students. Janelle has been spearheading SSA's Secular America Votes project to ensure that students and all Americans have the information and resources they need to register and get out the vote in this really incredibly critical election.
Right, so today we are talking about the election. It is ongoing now. Tens of millions have already voted, and Election Day, November 3rd, is only 6 days away. So we knew that 2020 would be a critical year even before COVID-19 killed more than 225,000 Americans and led to millions losing their jobs. It's created even more uncertainty around an already fraught election process. So now the stakes are even higher than we could have imagined. So we're going to talk voting today. And as always, if you have questions or comments about today's show topic, feel free to leave them in the comments here on Facebook, or you can email them to askanatheist@ffrf.org. Just want to throw out there, as a 501c3, FFRF is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse political candidates for office or political parties, but democracy is not a spectator sport. Our rights are on the line, especially FFRF's interests in all secular values issues. And so we would be remiss if we did not talk about voting this week.
That's right, Liz. A lot has happened very quickly in the 40 days since Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. And as time is strained during the pandemic, it feels like a year or two has passed just since Monday. Already, we've seen nearly 66 million Americans cast their ballots in early voting, many casting mail-in or absentee ballots, all while the Senate rushed to confirm Amy Coney Barrett, a Federalist Society judge connected with a radical religious group. She's going into Justice Ginsburg's seat with unprecedented haste.
That's right. And even before Justice Barrett's Senate confirmation on Monday, the Supreme Court has been chipping away at the wall of separation between church and state for many years now. And we've seen the judiciary steer more and more towards the religious right and the conservative right over the past few decades, and that's been enabled by elected officials with a Christian nationalist agenda. So it's become obvious that secular Americans can no longer rely on a fair and principled judicial branch to uphold our godless Constitution as it was written.
That's right. Well, and it shows that our work here at FFRF is more important now than ever. I'm sure our attorneys will continue to endeavor to forge a way ahead despite the challenges in front of them.
Right. And perhaps the biggest takeaway from the shocking and shockingly turbo speed confirmation of Justice Barrett is that elections really matter. We're here at this point because Merrick Garland is not on the court. As we know, that had huge consequences and ramifications for the 2016 election. And the federal courts have changed significantly in the last few years. The Senate has pushed through more than 200 federal judges during President Trump's first term. That includes 3 Supreme Court justices. And it's an unprecedented packing of the federal judiciary, but it's exactly what Christian nationalists have been plotting towards and dreaming of. And so that's why it is so important, not only that you join FFRF in our efforts to support the work we're doing, but also to vote your secular values. Your vote really matters.
Well, you're absolutely right, Liz. And that's why our guest has been doing such important work this year. Janelle Cronk, the campus organizer for the Secular Student Alliance, is the only national nonprofit dedicated to secular students, and they are working hard this year. Janelle has been spearheading the Secular America Votes project, again, to give people the resources and the, information they need in this unprecedented election. Hi, Janelle. Thanks for joining us.
Having me back.
It's great having you. So, Janelle, SSA launched the Secular America Votes campaign back like a decade ago or March, and a lot has changed since then. And so how have your strategies shifted?
Yeah, so we were just wrapping up our plans for voter registration drives when the shutdown happened, and we had to kind of pivot strategies. So our first step was creating a virtual voter registration portal that allowed people to register to vote, sign up for election reminders, and really get all the information they needed to stay up to date around this election. We, early on started advocating for vote by mail opportunities and safe polling sites, and really trying to get those things in motion back in March and April so that we could be where we are today and have the widespread option to vote by mail that we're seeing. So in addition to that, we tried to find new ways to introduce voter registration. In a typical year, 3/4 of people are going to register to vote in person without concerts and grocery stores and, the typical events that we normally see around voter registration. We really had to get creative. So it was awesome to see the, secular community come together nationally. We did some social media storms. We had several groups participate in National Voter Registration Day, as well as Vote Early Day this past weekend. So it's definitely been a different year, but seen some exciting ways to get engaged around voting.
Well, like you said, you've gotten very creative this year, and anybody watching can find that portal if they haven't voted yet, if they need more information, if you need to direct people who may not have already voted. They can go right to secularstudents.org/vote. It sounds like, obviously you've been really busy working to keep people engaged and active in spite of the challenges presented by COVID. But like everything in 2020, it seems like every unexpected challenge is followed by 2 or 3 more around the corner. So aside from shifting from, in-person events and registering on virtual platforms and pushing for the mail-in, we've also encountered some really concerning efforts to keep people away from the polls that are deliberate. And can you talk about what you've seen and what we can do to counter these things?
Definitely. So I think a major thing is misinformation and disinformation around the election. So combating that, and then also taking, being able to step in and look for the needs in your local community and these final days leading up to the election. Thinking about ways that you can connect with folks and let them know accurate information. I think, volunteering at polling sites is something we've recommended, whether that's as a poll worker, a poll monitor, or, just showing up and handing out snacks and water, helping to, provide shade or warmth, whatever the weather is on voting day. We've seen, incredibly long lines that people are expected to wait in. So the more we can do to help people feel comfortable and supported while they're standing in line and make sure that they get their vote counted is a really, I think, last minute way to get engaged and push, get out the vote efforts forward.
Absolutely.
So Janelle, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Liz.
Christina. Janelle, you mentioned misinformation and disinformation surrounding the election and how this is increasing. Everyone has probably heard the discussion centered around social media platforms, trying to control and contain the spread of false or misleading information. I'm curious if you have heard of other ways misinformation is spreading. Is this limited to the virtual social media world? What are you seeing in terms of things outside the virtual world spreading misinformation?
Definitely. So I think things, primarily are spreading through social media. It certainly allows things to spread quicker, but there are, other platforms that are being used. Some folks have been receiving robocalls that tell them if they vote by mail, they're going to be added to a national database that, is going to come after them to collect debt or, pass warrants. So there's, threatening calls like that in different ways that people are trying to convince people, that it's too difficult to vote, or voting by mail isn't safe. The polling sites are dirty, so a ton of different tactics. And I think as a secular community that values reason and science and facts, to be able to, step in and help to provide accurate information in these final days is super important. Being aware of what you share on social media, doing, the added few steps of researching to make sure that it's a valid source, confirming anything you share with the Secretary of State's office in that state. We've seen people sharing information about changing of polling sites or shutting down polling sites, and last minute voters that, may or may not want to vote. If it seems difficult, they may be discouraged. So let's make it as easy and accessible and make sure that what we share is accurate.
Well, that's all very useful. Are there phone numbers that people can call, or, we're all on our smartphones all the time. When you're standing in line, how can you check these things?
Definitely. So there's an election protection hotline. So if you do decide to go, help out in person, I think having phone numbers and things like that handy can be really useful. Bringing a laptop and tablet so you can look up on the spot if someone needs to check, where their polling site is. When I worked as a poll monitor, I came across a lot of people who, didn't receive any notification that their polling location had changed. So being able to quickly pull up where they needed to drive to next made it easier for them to get on their way and go vote. So I think that's one way to get engaged.
One of my favorite stories that I saw back from, I want to say, April during the primaries, folks were bringing the power banks for phones and laptops. So people who were standing in line for 4 or 5, 6 hours, their phones are draining, and there was somebody there to help. And this is kind of how, we build community, how we work together. And as secular people, like you said, we have values that include everybody. It's not just people who are of our, beliefs and persuasion, but we can just be there to help. And I really appreciate all of those great ideas.
So Janelle, I kind of want to ask you, you work with college students, the young people, and we know that, or we hope, I guess, that college students are maybe more savvy than, all the crazy uncles out there when it comes to online information and interactions. And but I am curious around just how young people in these weird times, who maybe are more savvy about voting absentee in general, and maybe are more savvy about information in general, like what kind of inspiring stories, or what are you seeing in terms of students and youth that you work with and engagement around the election? What are the positive stories that you can share with us all as we wet our beds in these last 6 days?
Definitely. Well, I think the sheer number of Gen Z and the population amount that they're taking up is exciting, but the level of action and engagement that we're seeing from our Secular Student Alliance members is really incredible. And we just are wrapping up our annual scholarship season, so being able to read through all those applications, and it felt like every single one was mentioning some form of voter registration advocacy or things that they were doing, or at minimum at least mentioning, I know the most important thing I can do is go vote this November. So there just seems to be a level of awareness that even, not that long ago when I was in college it definitely wasn't to this level. So I think that's exciting. And this year we've been working with Carolyn, who is our voter awareness intern, who FFRF helped support at SSA. So working with her, she's a community college student, and, being able to see her create fun graphics for other students and really engage in, Instagram stories and come up with new ways to connect people has been exciting. I think one of the key ways we've seen our students engage in this election has been volunteering to become poll workers and really kind of fill that void. So we started calling early on back in April, recognizing that there would be a void in that area. So getting young people there, and I think that's a really exciting thing, and just the level of conversation that's going on. A few other, we had one student group who kind of did a mobile voter registration drive. So since they couldn't, just set up a table like normal, they walked around with hand sanitizer and masks, and kind of put like a little walking billboard that had, information about their SSA club, as well as information to register to vote and request mail-in ballots. So that was cool and exciting. And I think that after going through this election, they're going to be a lot more committed to voting in the future. And I think learning about voter suppression so early on is going to, have an impact long term.
Oh, absolutely. And that's great to hear. And it's really inspiring to know that, people are starting those habits of voting early. Hopefully they pass them on to their younger siblings and, people who are still coming up, and it just becomes ingrained. Go out, vote every election. And what you folks at SSA are doing is just fantastic. How can students get involved with, your internships, your essay contests, scholarships? Where do they go?
Definitely. So they can go to secularstudents.org. So we have SSA chapters on over 300 campuses. We also work directly with individual students with leadership development and support. As Christina mentioned, we're the only organization that's dedicated to working directly with atheist, humanist, and free thought students. So, supporters of the community can make a donation at secularstudents.org. And currently we have a generous donor, Phil Ferguson, who is doubling monthly donations right now. So that's a, great way to support secular students. We have we do offer memberships, which are always free for students. So signing up as a member yourself helps to support and maintain and keep those memberships free for students, so we can continue providing the resources and support. And then I think some, creative ways to get engaged in your local community around supporting students, around the election, and just in general. Thinking about the colleges and universities that are in your local area, or, maybe where you went to school. Think about reaching out to the campuses and, seeing if they have any secular programming. You can always reach out to us at SSA. We're happy to make connections to local groups in your area. If you're interested in working more with students, they love to have speakers come in, and talk about a variety of topics. Educational meetings are, always a big thing. And, so to be able to offer your knowledge about civic engagement to the next generation, I think is a really cool opportunity. So you can email us at organizer@secularstudents.org, or, just find us through that website. So, but with six days left, really excited, and, to see how the Secular America Votes work has all come together, and really getting out the vote this year for the community. And if you have taken any action around voter registration or education efforts, I know we've seen, so many great events throughout the community. So feel free to let us know what you've done. SecularAmericaVotes.org, or the previous URL shared. You can share with us what actions you've taken if you've hosted a voter registration drive. We'd love to hear about it and keep you in the loop for future organizing and future elections that hopefully aren't as stressful as this one.
We all hope that. Well, and it's great to know that, alumni and folks don't have to be students. As secular people who value reason and science, we consider ourselves lifelong learners, so we can get involved as members of SSA and support those student groups. And, it's interesting, Liz, do we know anyone who goes to speak at events like that? Maybe like you?
Yeah, so of course, our co-presidents, especially Dan Barker, does a ton of speaking engagements at student groups across the country and other programming. But so do many of the attorneys that are working in our legal department. We have a ton of experience presenting at conferences, giving talks before student groups, workshops. We've spoken most years at the SSA conferences. And so many of us are in the speaker database that SSA uses to connect speakers with student groups across the country. So we love talking to any and all student groups who want to hear what our legal team has to say. And then, of course, Dan Barker has been all over the campus circuit, kind of speaking from his really unique experience. And so we're always available to do that for college campuses and SSA groups that want someone from FFRF to come give their experience and share that. Well, so I do have a couple of questions, Janelle, if you can stick around, that just pop up from people watching, and I'm just going to try and kind of toggle here. So here's an interesting one, and we're always thinking about this at FFRF because demographics are a huge part of our fight. What do you know, Janelle, or do you have an idea what percentage of college students are secular or identify in some way with secular or free thought type of identity?
I don't know a percentage specifically, but I do know that it's on the rise and seeing more and more students identify as non-religious. And I think, previously maybe it was less of a conversation or something that was of importance to them to bring to, who their campus persona. But in the chapters we work with, it's exciting to kind of see the range of secularism that, people bring to the table, and really the diversity of thought and the actions they want to work on. And I think it just shows that, how wide-reaching the secular community is, and especially on college campuses. And so I think there's a lot of, exciting ways to kind of build community and connections throughout college campuses to help make sure that, the entire campuses is a safe space for secular students and not just the SSA on campus, because we hear that a lot from students that, this is the only place I could go to where I had people to talk to, where I felt comfortable, exploring my beliefs, exploring my lack of beliefs, and, having that conversation. So, and my feelings from my experience in college and working with students for the past several years is that a lot of students don't necessarily want to come out and identify as secular for one reason or another. So I think that can kind of suppress the reporting and statistics on that, while there's a lot of students that may be struggling internally with feeling like they're on a campus where they're less than because their lack of belief. So SSA really gives students an opportunity to be around one another and help build confidence and understanding, and hear from successful folks from FFRF that are advocating in these areas, and really see the groundwork for a future where they can identify with their secularism in a way that they're really proud of.
Very cool. So one other question that's probably not for Janelle, but it's kind of on the topic of elections, so I'll throw it out there, and we do get it a lot, more so in years that are not explosively mail and absentee voting. But is it legal for my polling place to be in a church? This is a big question that our legal department gets. I'm sure this year, less than prior elections, people will be actually going and interacting with their local polling place. But in general, sadly, it is legal for polling places to be in churches, and governments kind of work with and contract with all types of spaces to put polling places in. Many of them are secular, like schools. And, many of them are bizarre, like grocery stores. I voted in a grocery store. And many of them are churches. And what we do ask from people is to note whether or not sort of the church polling place is being exploited by the church itself to do any kind of persuading or exposing voters to religious messaging while they're in the space to vote, because we do know that can influence voting behavior, and that it's really inappropriate because the polling place is functioning as a secular kind of arm of the election. the election board or your local county or whoever's in charge of administering elections. So we do tell voters to note whether the space that they're voting in, whether they're being, subject to religious images, religious messaging, religious leafleting, people from the church that are exposing them to sort of either proselytizing or recruitment or any other kind of religious pressure. Not only is that really inappropriate, but studies show that it influences voter behavior. So note
Liz,
that if you are asked to vote in a church, and report it to FFRF.
And you can do that right on our website. Is there anything that you would suggest people do to take proactive steps to maybe prevent polling places from being placed in churches or grocery stores?
So courts have not ruled that in and of itself as a violation of the Establishment Clause, but of course that doesn't mean that your local election authority needs to use churches as polling places. And of course, the studies that have been done to show that religious imagery can influence voting behavior is a very good reason for governments to take notice and make sure that voting places are secular. So we always encourage people who are told that their voting place is in a church and who feel uncomfortable with that to be a squeaky wheel, to complain to your board of elections. Oftentimes there are secular locations within a short distance that make even better polling locations. And so you can always complain to your board of elections, your county clerk, to try and influence where your polling place is and make sure that it's secular.
Well, that's good to know. Hopefully, we'll be seeing lots of people getting out to the polls. If they have not already voted and have plans set up to vote in person, please be safe, hand sanitizer, mask up, bring a friend, make sure that your family, everybody needs to get out there this year. As we all know, it's absolutely critical. Thank you so much for joining us, Janelle. Honestly, your work this year has been phenomenal, and we really hope to see it pay off in 6 days. Anybody got the countdown clock going? But we're really grateful for you joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, and everybody get out and vote. Hopefully you already have. So.
Yeah, man. And one last shout out to the Secular Student Alliance. Please support Secular America Votes campaign. You can go to secularstudents.org/vote, share their link and their images on social media, and encourage everyone that you know to vote. Support secular students. Thank you so much for joining us on FFRF's Ask an Atheist. We are going to be on a hiatus for the next 2 weeks, returning on November 18th with our next new live show. In the meantime, you should look for FFRF's broadcast program. It is called Free Thought Matters, and it's hosted by FFRF co-presidents Annie Lord Gaylor and Dan Barker. It is available on television, that old thing, in major TV markets. It's also on YouTube and it's on Facebook. And this week's guest is the irreverent and hilarious free-thinking troubadour, Roy Zimmerman, amazing songwriter and super funny and relevant little tunes. And this is a quick sample here of one of his new songs, Religious Freedom to Burn Our Own Witches. Check it out.
Back when the pilgrims landed on these rocks, they thanked the Lord and they rang out their socks. They were escaping those religious tyrannies, so they said, geez, let us worship as we please. They knew the strictures of their scriptures would never fail them, and so they started lighting fires on the pyres in Salem. Freedom to oppress in the name of righteousness. Religious freedom to scratch where it itches. Religious freedom to burn our own witches.
Yes, Free Thought Matters airs on Sunday mornings across the U.S., is available on YouTube and Facebook at around the same time. I love those shooting locations, so shout out to that video production crew. And if you want more information about the Freedom from Religion Foundation, you, as always, can check out our website at ffrf.org. Again, we'll be back November 18th at noon Central with another live episode of FFRF's Ask an Atheist. Thank you for watching. Go vote.